The council chamber was alive with chatter, a restless hum that echoed off the high crystalline walls. Light from the molten rivers below flickered through the glass floor, casting the chamber in a shifting, ember-red glow. Dozens of officers sat in tiered rows, their armor gleaming, their faces eager and sharp. They had gathered not just for ceremony, but for what they considered a privilege, to hear the tales of the war hero who had fought the humans and returned alive. Some of the younger warriors leaned forward with barely contained excitement, whispering among themselves about the stories they expected to hear. One bragged that he would memorize every detail, so he could repeat it back to his squad mates. Another said he wanted to hear how many humans had begged for mercy before dying. The air was thick with anticipation, arrogance, and the smug certainty of a species that thought itself unchallenged in the stars. Then, the chamber fell silent. The great doors opened with a resonant groan, and the war hero stepped inside. He was not the radiant figure the younger officers expected. His gait was heavy, uneven, as if each step carried both weight and memory. Where others wore polished ceremonial armor, he came draped in worn battle plating, scarred and mismatched, pieces scavenged and repaired countless times. His left arm gleamed faintly mechanical and alien, not grown but grafted after some injury that refused to heal. His face bore lines etched by more than age. One eye shone dimly with artificial light. The other burned with something deeper, something that unsettled even the most seasoned generals. He walked slowly to the central dais, and though he said nothing, the room's hush thickened. He was legend, survivor campaigns that had reduced whole systems to rubble. To the council, he was victory incarnate. The younger officers could not restrain themselves. One of them, his crest polished and standing tall, leaned forward and called out, "Tell us, great warrior, how weak were they truly? How long did it take you to grind them down?" Another chimed in with a sneer. "Did they flee before you even raised your blade? Did they beg before you ended them?" The hero looked at them, just looked, and the laughter that followed their jeers faltered, then died. "You want tales of triumph?" His voice was low, roughened by age and something else, something strained, almost broken. "You want stories of how we crushed them?" He paused, his gaze sweeping the rows of eager faces. "You will hear none from me." Confusion rippled through the chamber. Murmurs rose, disbelief flashing across the faces of the young. Some laughed nervously, assuming it was a jest, but the older officers, those who had fought long enough to recognize the weight of certain tones, stiffened. The hero continued, his voice now sharper, cutting through the silence. "You think humans were prey, that they were weak, that they fell like wheat before the scythe. You could not be more wrong." He raised his mechanical hand, the metallic fingers curling slowly. "They're not prey. They are predators." The words hung in the chamber like a blade. One of the younger commanders scoffed, his crest feathers rattling. "Predators? Them? They're fragile. Their skin tears, their bones break. They drown their own atmosphere if it shifts even slightly. They are nothing but animals." The hero's gaze fixed on him, unblinking, and when he spoke, it was with the sharpness of a knife driven deep. "Then explain why, when every advantage was ours, when our fleets outnumbered theirs, when our weapons outmatched theirs, when their very world should have burned in a single cycle, they did not yield." The chamber shifted, the eager faces dimming with doubt. He leaned forward, his voice lowering but his words carrying across every row. "Do you know what happened when we first engaged them? We slaughtered them, wave after wave. And do you know what they did?" He paused. "They kept coming, broken, bleeding, dying, but still they came. They bled us dry one drop at a time, and every drop was paid for in bodies that refused to fall until we made them fall." He lifted his scarred hand, pointing to the hollow where his own flesh had once been. "I saw a human with his insides spilling out still fire's weapon until his last breath. I saw another drag himself on shattered legs just to drive a blade into one of our soldiers. And when we laughed at their desperation, when we thought it meant they were weak," his voice broke into a bitter laugh. "It wasn't desperation. It was determination." Unease spread through the rows of assembled officers. The younger ones shifted uncomfortably, while the veterans who had heard rumors of Earth campaigns leaned in with grim faces. The hero straightened, his figure casting a long shadow across the chamber floor. You mistake them because you do not understand them. They do not fight for glory as we do. They do not fight for conquest as we have. They fight so that others may live. Their soldiers lay down their lives not as an end, but as a beginning. Everyone that falls buys time for another to fight harder. Every death strengthens them. That is their power. A silence fell heavy over the room, the kind that feels alive, crawling beneath the skin. The war hero's voice dropped to a near whisper, yet it carried like thunder. You think we defeated them? His mechanical fingers clenched into a trembling fist. No, we survived them. Barely. No one spoke. The young no longer leaned forward in eagerness. They sat rigid, as if their seats had turned to stone. The older ones lowered their gazes, unwilling to meet his eyes. The weight of his words pressed down like the gravity of a collapsing star. The hero stepped back, scanning the chamber one last time. His voice was quiet now, but no less cutting. You cheer me as a conqueror, but I tell you this. The only reason I stand before you is because the humans let me. The chamber erupted, not in applause, not in jeers, but in silence so profound it choked the air. The silence in the chamber lingered like smoke after fire, choking and heavy. Some of the younger officers exchanged uncertain glances, their crests trembling faintly, while the seasoned veterans kept their eyes fixed on the scarred warrior. None dared to speak until one of the eldest counselors finally leaned forward, his voice sharp and demanding. Explain yourself. You dishonor the council with such talk. You stand as the survivor campaigns that ended their resistance. If humans are as you say, how is it that we hold their worlds now? The war hero's single living eye burned. He did not flinch at the accusation, nor did he falter. Instead, he stepped closer to the council dais and placed his mechanical hand against the crystalline railing, its fingers leaving faint scratches with the pressure. You think we hold their worlds, he said softly. But the truth is we hold only ashes, and even those burn us when we touch them. Confusion rippled across the chamber again, but his tone silenced further protests. His gaze swept the room as though he were measuring each of them, weighing their arrogance against what he had seen. They asked me to tell you the truths about humans, he said at last. Then listen, because I will speak only once. He straightened, his back rigid despite the weight of old injuries, and began. First, their adaptability. You do not understand it until you have seen it. We are bred for certain climates, certain atmospheres, certain battlegrounds. But humans, he shook his head slowly. They fight in jungles that swallow machines, in deserts that strip flesh from bone, in frozen wastelands where breath itself turns to shards of ice. They fight in the void of space with only thin suits to keep them alive. Wherever they are cast, they endure. And more than endure, they thrive. He raised his hand and flexed the artificial fingers. I saw them turn our own weapons against us. Tools they had never touched before, they learned them in moments. Systems we believed too complex. They broke and rebuilt in ways that shamed our engineers. Give a human anything, and it becomes a weapon. Give them nothing, and they make a weapon from their own bodies. That is what I faced. The chamber grew restless. Officers shifted in their seats, some scoffing under their breath, though more remained quiet now than before. The hero's voice hardened. Second, their cruelty. Do not mistake me. This is no weakness. It is a blade they turn upon themselves as much as upon us. I saw one of their soldiers with broken limbs drag himself across the ground, inch by inch, to strike down one of my men. He should have died. Any of us would have. But he did not care for his own life, only that he might take another of ours before his end. Another time, I saw them starve themselves just to feed their comrades, fighting half-mad from hunger, yet somehow still standing when the battle ended. He let out a sound that was neither laugh nor sigh, more the rattle of something buried deep within. They destroy themselves if it means destroying you. That is human cruelty. They treat their own lives as expendable tools. Imagine an enemy who values nothing of themselves except the chance to end you. A nervous silence followed. Some of the young tried to keep their arrogance, but it slipped from their faces like melted wax. Third, the hero said, his voice lowering to a near growl, their mercy. And this, This is the most terrifying of all, because I saw them spare those they should have slaughtered. I saw them bind the wounds of enemies who had moments before tried to kill them. I saw them share food with starving prisoners who spat curses in their faces. Do you know what that does to an enemy? It rots certainty from within. You can face hatred. You can fight vengeance. But mercy? Mercy corrodes you. It makes you question whether you are the monster. And when that thought takes root, you are already undone. The chamber stirred uneasily, but no one interrupted. They were caught now, held in the gravity of his words. Fourth, he said, his gaze distant now as though staring back into old battlefields, their memory. You think wars end when we say they do, when treaties are written and borders redrawn. For humans, wars never end. They pass them down in stories, in songs, in scars. Every child grows up hearing of the blood spilled. Every generation raves of the ghost of the last. They do not forget. They do not forgive. I watched a boy who lost his family in one battle grow into a commander 20 years later, and he led the strike that shattered our fleet. That is human vengeance, slow, patient, eternal. The hero's voice grew softer, but sharper still. You will never escape them once they set their eyes upon you. They will come in time. It might be tomorrow, it might be generations hence, but they will come. The chamber was deathly quiet. The arrogance that had filled it before his arrival had been stripped away piece by piece, replaced with something colder. Unease, fear, doubt. Finally, the hero drew himself up to his full height, his gaze sweeping the hall one last time. You call them fragile. I call them eternal. They are not the strongest. They are not the fastest. They are not the most clever. But they are the ones who never stop. Kill one and another rises. Burn their cities, and they rebuild from the ashes. Break their bodies, and they crawl forward anyway. Humanity cannot be ended. It can only be survived. He took a step back, the echo of his boots striking the crystalline floor sharp in the silence. His final words were quiet, almost a whisper, but every ear caught them. Pray they never see us as prey again. For a long moment, no one moved. The counselors sat frozen in their high seats, the younger officers staring wide-eyed. Their arrogance bled away, their pride turned to ash. The chamber, once so full of eager chatter, was now suffocating with silence. And the war hero, scarred and weary, turned his back to them and walked slowly toward the doors. Each step seemed to echo louder than the last. By the time the doors closed behind him, the counselors still had not spoken. Only one thought hung in the minds of all who remained in the chamber, unspoken yet undeniable. If such beings still roamed the stars, then they had been fools. Fools to ever awaken them.